Betty, hello Patrick, Rosemary is joined, Amy, tell us where you guys are from. It's always interesting to know where you're from. I know previous couple of weeks we had South Africa, of course. We've had a couple of English. We've got a good following, lots of fans in England. We had Portugal. We didn't have any from the US last week, from what I can remember. We've had Holland. We've got Audrey from Durban. Okay, Sue is looking forward to the pairing. So am I. I hope your bubbly is well chilled, Sue. Consider yourself lucky if you've got some. Given the times we're in, Barry, you're probably aware of us being back in an alcohol ban again.
I am, Johan. I mean, it's just so disappointing to hear that, just when things were starting to pick up again. I'm also just really grateful you managed to slip us a container of wine back to the UK in between all of this. It arrived today safely, and it's all packed away, ready to distribute on this side. Yeah, it's a really feeling for you guys. It must be really tough.
You are going back to normal again, right? How's your okay, so we've got we've got the load shedding kicking in, so just bear with us for a second. Yeah, I'm just gonna wait till we're onto the generator. But Barry, you guys are Barry's from the UK, so by the way, for those that don't know, how's things been since you've been opening up restaurants, the likes of golf clubs and wineries? How's people been responding to it? Are they willing and open to go to public spaces?
Yeah, and today was actually the grand opening again of our restaurant, but our facility's been open. The golfers have been really busy. We've reintroduced today wine tastings. We're all taking the precautions. Everyone's careful, but I mean, down on the bottom terrace today, we must have, you know, it's a full terrace. There must be 80 people out there today. We're very fortunate, you know, we've got a lot of space and we're able to keep the social distancing. We've got a lot of protocols we've put in place. Staff are being very careful. And where we are in West Sussex, we're very lucky because the infection rate is really low.
Okay.
But it's been a tough time, but it's great to be finally reopening. In fact, everything is now reopened. You can go into any shops. You can eat in restaurants. Yeah, back to normal, almost. The new normal at the moment.
Okay. All right, so glad to hear that people are confident enough to go to public places and restaurants. I think everyone in the hospitality industry kind of needs that desperately, people to come back. For those that have joined, I think we pretty much everyone is settled in, hopefully with a glass of bubbly, or the bubbly sitting and chilling. Barry Anderson that you see on your screen is from a sister property of Benguela Cove in the south of England in Sussex, Manning's Heath Golf Club and Wine Estate. We've a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, we planted our first vines in England, and we're busy setting up a vineyard and a winery that side. Barry recently, I think it's about a year now, Barry moved from South Africa to head up our operations that side. So he's our managing director, viticulturist, and pretty much overseeing everything wine related in the UK. But Barry, I'll ask you a little bit later if we have a gap. It will be interesting maybe just to fill everybody in. I don't think a lot of people are aware of what's happening in England in terms of the whole wine scene and how it exploded. But England mostly focuses on making sparkling wine, and since we've got a Classique, a sparkling wine this week, I thought let's get Barry onto the call as well, since we've got a lot of viewers from England. A lot of people know Barry, so I thought it was just fitting for you to join us. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Johan. That's fantastic to be here. We did a series a couple of weeks ago in the UK with Johan, a 6-week series, which was a huge success. So it's great to join you on the South African series. I look forward to telling you a little bit more later on.
And then, as per usual, or last week, we are also joined by winemaker Michelle and Chef Annie this week. Hello, guys. You can just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So, as you're all aware, this week we're doing sparkling wine, Method Classique, or in short, as we call it, MCC. There is a difference between normal sparkling wine and Classique sparkling wines, but we'll go into detail on that a little bit later. But maybe just to set the stage, just to get us into the mood with sparkling wines, I thought I'd put a few slides together for you again this week. So sparkling wines, or this method of making the bottle fermented way of making sparkling wines like we do at Benguela Cove, dates back to 1693, and a French monk called Dom Perignon. So most of you would have heard of Dom Perignon. It's also a famous champagne brand ever since. So he discovered this back in the days when they were making wine in Champagne. Obviously, they didn't have the lab-grown commercial yeast strains that we have today. That is, they've grown up and they can handle alcohol, higher alcohol levels, so they can finish a fermentation. So to finish a fermentation, it means that the yeast depletes all the sugar in the grape juice and converts everything into alcohol. Back in those days, they had yeasts that naturally occurred in the environment, in their cellars, in their vineyards. So those yeast not being strong enough, and towards the end of the season, as autumn and winter kicks in and the cellars, the temperature cooled down, which also puts more strain on those yeast cells, they couldn't complete the fermentation. Now, back in the 1690s, obviously didn't have the labs and the technology and the knowledge that we have today. So when the fermentation stopped, what they did is they bottled these wines, not knowing that the fermentation isn't done. So they bottled the wine with some residual sugar, closed it with a cork, and placed them away in their cellars. The wines were kept intact over the cold winter because it was too cold for these yeast cells to be active. Came spring and summer, and those cellars heated up again. The secondary fermentation kicked in, those yeast cells became active again, they started fermenting those residual sugars, and a byproduct of fermentation is not only the alcohol, but it's also CO2 gas, or the bubbles we taste in wine. So as those fermentations happened, with the CO2 gas that got generated, it popped out all their corks, which was obviously a big problem for them. So what they did to address this corks of pushing out because of the gas that gets generated inside the bottle, they had a little metal bracket that they placed over the cork that kept the cork inside so it couldn't push out. So secondary fermentation happened, but now they had the cork in the bottle and it couldn't push out. So all that CO2 gas that got generated got absorbed into the wine. And it was on the 4th of August 1693 that this gentleman opened one of those bottles, and his words, very famous words, you'll see it all over his "Come quickly, I'm tasting the stars," obviously referring to the bubbles in the wine. And so champagne and sparkling wines were born. There's a lot of famous quotes on champagne, on sparkling wines. It's probably the wine most talked about by famous people, or famous quotes are about. And I thought when I was looking at this one today, this is also a very, very famous quote, is I only drink champagne when I'm happy, which I think most of us can relate to. But Lady Bollinger also said, and when I'm sad, sometimes I drink it when I'm alone. So this side of the world, Barry, we are a bit sad that we can't get our hands on our favorite bubblies. And I guess we're also a little bit alone in that everybody is still expected to stay at home. But it's not all bad. As Lady Bollinger said, when you're sad, when you're alone, that's the time to open a bottle of bubbly just to cheer you up and get you in a good mood. So it's not only for happy times, it's also for when you feel a little bit down and you're looking for something to cheer you up. So hopefully we get to cheer up all the South African viewers today with a glass of bubbles.
I'm sure you will, Jan. I'm sure you will. I really feel for you guys. But it too will pass, and we will be enjoying many bottles of your wine soon again, I'm sure, in SA.
Yeah, so and there it goes on. There's a lot of famous one. There comes a time in every woman's life when the only thing that helps is a glass of champagne. Too much of anything is bad, but too much champagne is just right, which I tend to agree with. Champagne is like duct tape. It fixes everything. And on it goes. There's a lot of the likes of Winston Churchill was a big lover of sparkling wine. I just checked on the internet. The rumor goes, or what's been published, is that he enjoyed up to 30,000 bottles of champagne during his lifetime, which is quite a number.
That's impressive.
What a lucky guy.
He's the wine buyer we all dream of, Jan.
Exactly. So yeah, today Benguela Cove produces 2 MCC sparkling wines. This is our top one, our flagship sparkling. It's called the Joie de Vivre. So obviously we're not allowed to refer to our wines as champagne because it's not been made in France. But we've been a little bit cheeky in giving it a French name. So Joie de Vivre, for those that don't know, means the joy of living, happiness, cheerfulness, celebrating just about everything good, which, as I mentioned, is pretty much what sparkling wine is about. Our one is a Cup Classique, a bottle fermented one, which, as I mentioned, we'll elaborate on a little bit more later on. We've just released the 2017 vintage and really happy, Michelle and myself and the whole team this side, for it really recently to be awarded as one of the top 10 Cup Classiques in South Africa. So if you've got a bottle of this with you, I hope you enjoy it as much as the judges did. But enough of that for now. Let's head back to Annie and Michelle. Annie, we discussed briefly last week how sparkling wines can be a challenging wine to pair with. So I think everybody's looking forward to what you've got in store for us this week.
It can be challenging, but luckily the MCC is not that hard to pair with. You have kind of certain things that I love going for, and I normally use and pair with it. And this week it's no exception. I'm going to go into the whole wine and how a little bit later. But for now, I'm just going to show you what we have in store over here. So we're going to do a passion fruit or baked passion fruit cheesecake. So I'm just going to talk you through the ingredients and everything very quickly and give you a quick how-to and just show you how ridiculously easy it actually is. So we have our cream cheese over here, which is just going to dump in our KitchenAid bowl, which is always a trusty little tool in the kitchen to have. And we have our sour cream. It's just going to dump all of that in there. Take that away, our sugar. And our vanilla. I'm just gonna pop this in the machine. Like I said, we have our go-to, or I have our go-to ingredients that I like using with the MCC. Sorry, wrong one first. I normally like going tropical flavors with it, so that's why the passion fruit cheesecake is no exception. And it is quick and easy to make. It's literally just putting it in the oven and keeping an eye on it, which I'm going to show you now. Just get this mixer going quickly. Okay, so while that's mixing, we're just going to drop our eggs in there. and our yolks. And we can't forget our passion fruit, otherwise it's more little cheesecake. And give that a quick little mix. And that's it. So over here we have our base, which is just normal shortbread biscuits that we mix with a little bit of butter and then press it down on the bottom, and then you want about a 2 centimeter height on the sides. And we're just going to dump this in there and then pop it into the oven. So you want a preheated oven at about 160 degrees for about an hour. It should be more than enough time for it to bake, set. And then I normally like to leave it in the oven for another 15 or so minutes. Just that heat kind of just helps bake it a little bit longer if it hasn't set properly. But you can always just give it a little jiggle to see, but I'll show you that a little bit later on. But yeah, so while I pop this in, let's go back to Barry.
Okay, so I mean, I can totally relate to that tropical fruit or passion fruit that you're using with this wine, but I'm also thinking, and I'm not sure if you did this on purpose or this was part of your plan, but I think texture-wise, what you get from the sparkling wine and the cheesecake, I think that's also going to be a really good match. But definitely. I don't know about you guys. It looks like Michelle has got some bubbles in her glass. Barry, do you have something there?
I have poured myself a little glass, looking forward to trying it again.
Okay, so I'm just going to get myself here because I'm still don't have anything. So a nice little trick to tell your friends is any great sparkling wine, a sign of that is if you give this little wire root 6 twists. If it takes 6 twists to come off, that's a sign of a great wine. It's obviously not the truth. All of them are like 6 twists, but your friends tend to buy that. So when opening sparkling wine, it's obviously you take off the little wire hood that keeps the cork on, but always just a good idea to keep one of your thumb on top of the bottle as well, because every once in a while, because each and every one of these bottles are different and are different ferments, so some of them behave a little bit differently, and sometimes the cork just comes off. It's not supposed to, but you'll know it happens. So always a good idea to keep your thumb on it, and then just keep the cork still and twist the bottom of the bottle. So you're keeping your thumb on top, hold on to the cork, and you're not turning the cork, you're just turning the bottle, and you'll feel the cork is slowly starting to come. And as it comes out, you just kind of apply pressure back on, because you don't want, I know it's probably the most amazing sound in the world, but you don't want a big hard pop. You want just like a soft, just like that. The French call it a whisper. And the reason we want that is because if you do a big pop, you're at risk of losing some of the wine that's inside, but also you lose a lot of your CO2 gas by doing a big pop. And the whole thing about the sparkling and the CO2 gas is the bubbles. So when pouring, you just hold on to the bottom part of the bottle and you just tip it forward. For sparkling wine, always a good idea just to run it down the side of the glass. Otherwise, when you pour it to the center of the glass, it makes a lot of foam, like a beer almost. And again, you lose your bubbles by doing that. I've not done it now because I don't have a basin with me. But what I usually do is just to pour a little bit in the glass and just to rinse my glass, the sides of the glass with a bit of bubbly. The reason being, if there's any residue of dishwashing liquid or cloth, those little particles coming from a drying cloth, both of those make the bubbles disappear, which is obviously not what you want. So always just rinse it with a little bit of bubbles and before you pour yourself a glass. You can use water, but often water has got quite a sharp smell to it as well. So therefore, I just, you don't have to tip it. You can swallow that little bit that you use, and then you'll see a nice, like you can see on this glass, nice bubbles going up, which is a sign of a glass that doesn't have any dishwashing residue or cloth particles. But Michelle, you've got a glass there as well, and you want to tell us about the wine making, and maybe just if you can elaborate a bit on this method of making sparkling wine and how that compares to other methods that's been used, and how this one is different, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's start off with the methods of actually making sparkling wines. There are three main methods that we use. This one we're tasting today is made in the traditional way, or called in Method Classique. We also get two other methods that I won't go into too much detail. It's called tank fermentation, or the Charmat method, which is when we take the wine, we add the yeast and the sugar for the second fermentation, and the second fermentation actually happens inside a tank that's usually made in bigger volumes, but lesser quality. Normally Proseccos are made in this style. And then also you get the carbonation method, which is when literally it's like a soda stream machine. So you have your tank of still wine and you just add CO2 gas to that wine, and then it creates the bubbles. It's usually a bit harsher, again, bulk wines, but lesser quality, not great. But then this one we have is a very special way of making. So it's called the traditional method, or Method Champenois, or Method Classique. In South Africa, we usually refer to them as Method Classique. So what happens here is, instead of doing the second fermentation, which is of course where the bubbles in the wine comes from, in the tank, we do it in the bottle. So the bottle you see here is the bottle the second fermentation would have happened in. So we add the base wine, the yeast, and the sugar for the second fermentation to this bottle. We close it up with a little crown cork, and second fermentation then happens inside the bottle. So carbon dioxide, or CO2 gas, is a byproduct of fermentation, and this builds up inside the bottle, creating the bubbles. Generally, the pressure inside the bottle goes up is anything between 5 to 7 atmospheres, which is, I think, about 2 times the pressure in a car tire, if I'm not mistaken. And then, that obviously stays inside the bottle and creates the nice fizz we get. Also, what happens as the yeast cells dies off, as fermentation ends, these yeast cells die off and end up in the bottle in a process called yeast autolysis. Normally, we keep, or wine stays in contact with this sediment, and this creates a bit of texture and complexity in the wine. In South Africa, wines have to stay in contact with this yeast for at least 9 months to be classified as Method Classique, before we can take out the yeast sediment and add the cork. But that's just a quick rundown, and I know you're going into more detail about how we actually make the wine. If we go to this wine in particular, which we're very proud of and it's delicious, it's made of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which again is also the kind of traditional cultivars we use in this method of making MCC. And then before we start tasting, just something interesting. I know a lot of people ask the question, do we swirl MCCs or not before we taste them? You don't have to. So the bubbles that come to the top kind of release those flavors that you smell, or it has the same effect as swirling a wine would. So if we want to smell this wine, it's very fresh in flavors, so nice, like I would say, I don't know what you guys think, some biscuity notes, nice fresh acidity, fresh grapefruit, maybe some citrus notes as well. And then on the palate, there's a nice, like, fine, bubble fine mousse. Again, fresh is like citrus sweetness coming from it as well. Maybe some fresh apples, and like a mineral saltiness almost, if you want to call it that. And then also some really nice biscuity notes and nuttiness coming from that yeast autolysis that we spoke about. there's a beautiful balance between kind of the flavors coming from that autolysis, the butteriness kind of, and the fresh fruit flavors as well. So very elegant wine, pairs well with food, delicious on its own as well. And
I guess that that biscuity nuttiness that you're referring to, or that toastiness, that is a function of this wine spending 2.5 years on those yeast cell sediment inside the bottle that releases those flavor. So you can't, no matter what you do, you can't copy that with any other method of making sparkling wine, is that toasty nuttiness that you get from this style. But what also helps to distinguish between the two is the very fine bubble that you've mentioned it, this fine small bubble you have on this compared to the one that is the carbonated one, which is like a soda, Coca-Cola type big foamy bubble. So when it comes to these, I guess there is no shortcut when it comes to producing quality sparkling.
exactly, yeah. And each bottle is almost unique in its own right, seeing as a fermentation, no bottle's fermentation is exactly the same, or the yeast autolysis happening is not always identical. So it could be seen that each bottle is kind of a unique product, I feel, which is amazing if you think about it like that. All of the loving care that goes into making every single bottle that you actually receive.
I'm just seeing, and I forgot to mention, there's a couple of questions coming in. There's, for everyone that's joining the first time, maybe there's a Q&A section, so please feel welcome to pop in any questions you've got for anyone in there, and we'll try and answer them as we go along. So talking of, I might just have a look.
I've got one for Michelle quickly, Johan. Just one of my favorite topics, stemware. Just talk us through the glass selection that you guys are using. I think all three of us have slightly different glasses.
So that's also a bit of an ongoing debate, I think, still. Normally, you'd see people drinking sparkling wines out of the flute glass. We prefer drinking sparkling wines out of a white wine glass, just for the assessment of the actual wine. You tend to be able to assess the wine better in a white wine glass because it's easier to use as well. The flute is generally used to preserve the bubbles in the wine because it has a longer way to travel, it has less contact with oxygen, so it doesn't lose that bubble as quickly. But the white wine glass is technically better to taste from.
Yeah, it's funny that you ask it, Barry. It was one of the questions that just came in, so
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, I've got, Michelle is quite right in everything she said when it comes to appreciating the wine and getting the full expression white wine glass. I've got a fluid here, not ideal, but this one is a little bit wider, but fluids just feel nice. A lot of people like to be seen with them because then everybody knows they're drinking bubbly. But back home, I've got rid of all our fluids and it's just white wine glasses because that is the way to go. Here's another question, Michelle, while you're going, you might as well answer it. What is the difference between MCC and champagne?
So essentially it's the same thing. Champagne wines are also made in the same method that I just explained, the traditional method. Champagne just refers to wines made in the Champagne region of France. So this wine is identical to the wines made in France or in Champagne. We just can't call it Champagne because it's not made in that region of France. So we refer to it as Méthode Classique.
Okay, so we don't make champagne in South Africa. We make wines using the exact same technique. In the case of this wine, we're using the same grapes, but we can't call it champagne. We call it Classique, just to be clear about it.
In the UK, we make it in exactly the same way, and we call it sparkling wine. So,
yeah. Talking of Barry, and I briefly mentioned that we're busy setting up a sparkling wine winery that side and the vineyards. Maybe now's a good time just to to talk a bit of English sparkling and what you're busy with on that side?
Yeah, it's been a super exciting year and a half that I've been in the UK. I was approached by our owner, Penny Streeter, about, just over 2 years ago, and asked if I'd be interested in coming across and heading up their UK operations. And having worked with Johan over the last few years, even when he was originally at KWV, it sounded like a really exciting prospect, and it certainly has been. So we've got 2 properties in West Sussex. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Hold on a second. The beautiful Mannings Heath Golf and Wine Estate. So this was the first golf and wine estate in the UK. Penny and Johan came across and had a look, looking for property to plant sparkling wine in the UK. And they found Mannings Heath, which was a golf course, had 2 18-hole golf courses. We now still have our signature course called the Waterfall. And the Kingfisher, which was an 18-hole, is now a 9-hole. Beautiful property, has the correct slopes. We have fantastic soils. That's
Actually selecting those holes that the best slopes and suitability for vineyards, and they became converted into vineyard.
Absolutely. Well, here's quite an old picture now, Johan. You remember this? There's a picture of yourself and Penny and your then consultant, Duncan. This was the first vines being planted in 2017. If you look very carefully, you'll see the old bunkers. And this is today. I think I took this picture a week ago. This is a block of Chardonnay that we have. Our first vintage we will be cropping in September, October. So super excited. Quite different, Johan, to what I'm used to in SA. You know, even though I've been in viticulture for the last 20 plus years, it's very different and very challenging. But, you know, that's why I'm here. I was looking for a challenge, and I certainly have one, but very, very rewarding.
Okay.
So we've got just over 37 acres planted on Mannings, and once our winery is built, we hope to start building hopefully in the latter part of this year. We'll be producing around 72,000 bottles of sparkling wine. Just a pic of the other property. This is Leonardsley Lakes and Gardens, and just to the right of the main house, you'll see a block of vineyard. There we've got Pinot Noir and the first UK Pinotage planted. So Johan, I think this was one of your brainchilds to test drive Pinotage in the UK climate. I've got to tell you, I must send you a picture in the next couple of days. The vines are absolutely thriving. Grapes are healthy. So I'm quietly optimistic, to be honest, that we might still be able to produce a great UK red.
Yeah, with that got a lot of attention planting Pinotage, which is obviously a South African grape in UK soils, for various reasons. Some people thought it was a great initiative. Some people wanted to chop our heads off for doing it, but we had to wave the South African flag a bit on that side as well.
Yeah, well, we're super excited to have our first harvest this year of Pinotage. This is just an aerial view of the very famous rock garden on Leonardsley. Very famous for their azaleas and rhododendrons and the 7 lakes that run through the middle of the gardens. So anyone visiting the UK, highly recommend a visit to Leonardsley Gardens. Just a quick background on the UK, which is quite interesting. A number of wineries, 164 wineries now in the UK, over 3,500 hectares now planted. This is quite a big number. They're predicting by 2040 that we'll have over 40 million bottles produced of wine across the UK. Just looking at the main varieties planted, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier, I don't think any surprise there. We all know the UK is renowned to be one of the best sparkling wine growing areas in the world. And Johan, that's why we're here, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, one of the questions happened to be why only sparkling wine in England, or for us at least?
Yeah, I think the big change that's come to the UK, especially over the last 10 or 15 years, and that's why it's seen the boom in the sparkling wine industry, is the fact that we're on the same latitude, and with climate change, things have warmed up in France and specifically in Champagne, and the same goes for the UK. We're having a lot warmer summers and actually idyllic growing seasons for vines. There's been a few blind tastings where the best of the best in Champagne have been pitted against the UK sparklings, and those UK sparklings have come out top. So we also, just on that note, I've just got to put a flag up for West Sussex, with the area that we're in, and we believe one of the top growing areas in the UK at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the fact that vineyard plantings have been tripling year on year for the last 3-4 years is just a sign of it exploding. It must, by a long shot, be the fastest growing wine region in the world. And I think there's no better endorsement than the wineries or the big brands from Champagne now buying up all the land they can get their hands on in England. So which just shows that they know just how good the quality is coming out of England. So I think it's great for the English that the French are buying theirs, because I said, what a great endorsement.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Johan. And then just this, I thought this was quite interesting. Very different to most other areas in the world. But you can see from the pie graph on the right-hand side, almost all sparkling wine or all wine produced in the UK is sold in the UK. They only export 8% at the moment. So, and of that, 72% are sparkling wines and 28% still wines are being produced. So long may that last. Obviously, a lot of vines are being planted, and there is going to be a challenge going forward. We are aware of that. But like any wine growing region, we just got to make sure we are the best. And that's why we've got these two beautiful properties. Our owners believe in it, and we've got a fantastic winemaker sitting there in the background who plans to come across and make wine on the side. Johan, are you going to get here this season?
I was thinking of maybe jumping onto a boat come next week, because that might be the only way to get there and to get there in time. But it's going to be an interesting one. We might have to use this Zoom thing to help me through the winery and see what's going on that side. So
we'll be the first guys to virtually make wine. Is that what you're telling me?
Yep.
All right. No, that's all from me, guys. Just a little intro. There's a golf course in the background, and obviously we are big supporters of the Benguela Cove brand, and we sell it across the UK.
Yeah, thanks, Barry, for that. I mean, it's kind of general knowledge. So until England is in production, right now, it is all wine critics and wine media across the world will say that the closest thing in terms of style and quality outside of Champagne would be South African sparkling wine. So we'll just hang on to that, and then we'll compare English and South African one. So back to our one. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Let me just, while Annie, I see she's still busy, Michelle quickly touched on the process, and I've got a few images that I can maybe just to help explain how it all works. So we've mentioned, we call it Classique in South Africa. Obviously, a lot of countries are using this this method, to call it the real or the traditional method. In France, outside of Champagne, there's other wine growing regions. They call it Cremant. Italy call it Method Classico, so not Cava. Cava is something else. Cava is not call it the bottle fermented method. The US, Spain are quite famous for it. They call it Cava. Not so much of importance for us in South Africa. We're not exposed to wines from all over the world on our shelves. But I know we've got a couple of international viewers as well that might be facing the shelves and seeing all these names and not sure what it all means. So just to guide you on the different names for bottle fermented sparkling wines. And then to add to the confusion, I guess, is all these terms you see on the bottles like sec and extra dry and brut zero and what it all means. Those are just indicators of the sugar level in the wines. So they are a bit confusing in that extra dry, for instance, is a little bit sweeter than brut or extra brut, which is, it's confusing. But as those, just to help you, those are guidelines for sugar levels in the wine. So you'll see ours is a brut, and if we wanted, brut is quite wide, but if we wanted, we could have labeled it as an extra brut. But as I said, it is confusing, so we tend to use just brut on our label. Talking of the label, you'll also see on the back, we've got all the bottles that was produced, the exact number of bottles, the percentage of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, the vintage, and then we've also got, if you've wondered, there's a disgorgement date, and I'll show you just now what disgorgement is. So you can trace this bottle back to the exact day that it was disgorged. So we go into quite a bit of detail, but it is a special product, so we go the extra mile in explaining you and sharing with you what we've done. So as I mentioned, in this specific wine, we use Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. The other one, the one that we've got planted in England, is Pinot Meunier. And all these aromas are aromas should we have released this wine as a 1-year-old wine. With time and time on that lease, it develops into more these jammy, dried fruit, toasted bread, toffee flavors, and eventually becomes quite toasty and mushroomy. So to help you, this wine that we're tasting, and this is as time goes by, so this is 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 to 4 years, 5 years and beyond, you start getting these flavors. So this wine sits almost here in the middle. So we've got a nice fruitiness, nice fruit expression, but you're starting to see signs of this brioche honey notes as well, which is exactly stylistically where we want to sit with this wine. So this has been on the lease for 2.5. The last ones would be 3.5 years that it sits in the winery maturing. So just briefly the process. So how this works is we take a normal winemaking process, ferment the wines till they're completely dry, so there's no sugar left in the wines. What we do then is we look at all our different wines. We make a blend for the sparkling wine process. We take that blend, we add sugar back into the wine and yeast. So now the yeast starts fermenting that sugar that we've added back in. As that fermentation starts, we put it into bottle straight away, and we bottle it not with a cork like they used back then, but with a beer cap on top of the bottle. That's why these bottles have this shape, is for the beer cap to hold on to the top part. So with the beer cap, the CO2 gas can't push out. As Michelle mentioned, it's up to 6 bars of pressure in the bottle. The beer cap keeps all the gas inside, and from there, obviously, the bubbles that we're after. Then once that fermentation is done, the aging process starts, where all the magic happens and all the flavors gets released back into the wine. So the wine we use for sparkling wine production is not like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chardonnay or a Chenin that's very aromatic and showy. It's actually quite a neutral wine, because we're not looking for a lot of flavor in what we call the base wine, the wines that we start with. It's the second fermentation and the time in the bottle that's those flavors that we're after. So just out of interest, we've mentioned 6 bars of pressure in the bottle. The reason why you want to keep your thumb on the bottle is the speed of a cork leaving a bottle is 120 kilometers per hour. So that's the reason why you don't want to be pointing at your friends, but to rather keep it safe. And then what you see on the screen now is a microscopic view of the bubbles inside your glass. And I wonder if anyone wants to take a guess on how many bubbles is in one of these bottles. So I'm not sure who counted it, but it's scientifically proven that in one bottle of sparkling wine, there's 49 million bubbles. So quite a number to imagine, 49 million bubbles in one bottle of sparkling wine. But I thought it looked quite beautiful looking at it under the microscope. As I explained to you, back in the days, Dom Perignon, they used these brackets to keep the corks inside. What we use is these beer caps just to lock it in and to keep the gas inside. That's the image of now the fermentation is done. So those yeast cells die off because there's no more sugar to feed on, and they settle to the bottom of the bottle, and we keep it in this stage on that what we call the lees, the sediment, for depending on how much of those flavor evolution I showed you want in the bottle. Obviously, before we release it into market, we have to remove these yeast cells. So we remove that and we collect them by a process that we call riddling. So that is just the process of, those yeast are quite sticky, it's almost like putty. So it's a process of turning the bottle, and by turning the bottle or rocking it, we're collecting all that dead yeast cell, and they connect to each other. And as we rock the bottle, we also tilt it forward, so it eventually starts, once it's collected, it starts sliding into the bottom part of the bottle, like you can see on this image on the right-hand side. So as I said, that is how it starts. And as we start turning the bottle and collecting all the dead yeast cells, we also tip it forward, like you see on this photo, until it stands on its head and everything is collected in the bottom part of the bottle. Back in the days and smaller operations, it was the monks still going around and turning millions of bottles a day, just turning, but also tipping it gradually. So this happens over about a 14-day period of collecting all the dead yeast cells and for them to slide to the bottom of the bottle. These days, in bigger operations for sure, we use these automated cages that mimics exactly what has been done by hand. And I don't know if you've noticed, but while Barry was talking, there was a big noise in the background, my side. And just opposite of me, we've got all our riddling cages. And as if they knew we were talking about them and sparkling wine, the cages started turning as well. And obviously they make noise just as a warning. So should anyone be close, just to step back. So it's as if they wanted to join the party. So once we've collected everything at the bottom, we place these bottles in this position, in this, which is an ice bar. So it's at -8 degrees Celsius. And what happens is we just put it in deep enough to freeze this top section of the bottle. So you've got that dead yeast cells in there and a little bit of wine that gets frozen. So now we can turn the bottle upside or back in this position again. And you've got this, the frozen little bit of wine and yeast cells at the top. And by removing this beer cap with the 6 bars of pressure inside, it just shoots out by itself, and you remove a little bit of wine and that dead yeast cell. So what remains in the bottom part of the bottle is like perfectly clear wine. So because we've removed a little bit of wine, we just top it up back to 750 mils again. And the wine we use for topping up, that is called the dosage or the liqueur. With that, you can add a little bit of sugar if you wish, a little bit of preservatives if you wish, a little bit of, some people might use a little bit of like brandy, but every winery's got their own recipe on what they use to top up the bottle. Obviously, you can't use artificial flavorants or colorants or anything, but anything natural from wine or a bit of sugar you can add back into the bottle to get your balance right and do a few final adjustments. Once the bottle is topped up, it goes on a corking line, which inserts a cork and a wire root just to keep it all intact. So once that happens and it's labeled, hopefully then soon after it goes into an ice bucket. So whilst sparkling wines age really, really well on that yeast cells with the beer cap, once it's corked, you're not supposed to keep it for too long. It doesn't benefit a great deal from sitting under cork. So we delay the gorging and the corking process to as late as possible. So once, and that's also why we put the disgorgement date on the bottle. So if you pick up from the shelf, and not everybody discloses when it's been disgorged, but if it's 2 or 3 years that it's been under cork, the wine hasn't really benefited from that. So sparkling wines, older ones can be great if they've been disgorged at a late stage, but definitely not something you want to be aging. And I've seen a question pop up, and I'll get to it, on vintage versus non-vintage sparkling wines and aging. So just I'll get back to that soon. Once it's labeled, out it goes. Sparkling wines, as we said, obviously a synonym with good times. We've got these nice sparkling wine parties every year in November, where we get all the bands out and people come, and everything is just having a good time out. So watch out for that. The moment we go back to normal, we'll definitely advertise when we'll be doing that. It's been a great success in previous years, and we've been having a lot of fun with that. This is just some more images of the property, and obviously sparkling wines and weddings go hand in hand. Barry, you've been here a couple of times, and for those that visited would know Benguela Cove is a very popular wedding destination for obvious reasons, as you can see on the photos. We've even had some here in the cellar last year. So, or just if you just want to come and visit and sit on the stoop at Annie's restaurant, that's some of the views you'll be enjoying while sipping on some bubbly. It all looks a little bit empty at the moment, but soon we can't wait to open our doors back up and yeah, come and visit us. Okay, just some more quotes. In a perfect world, everyone would have a glass of champagne every evening. Well, we're not in a perfect world now, but in a perfect world, that would have been ideal. My only regret in life is that I didn't drink enough champagne. Okay. And then last one, I wish I drank more champagne or sparkling wine. So sparkling wine, there's this thing that it's only for special occasions, and we should keep it in the fridge for someone's birthday or anniversary or to celebrate. It's not the case. That's what I always try to tell people, is it's not only for special occasions. We all love it. So, and we're all constantly looking for an excuse to open it. So price point wise, sometimes they are a little bit steep, but if you're like me and just like to open a bottle of sparkling wine on a Thursday evening, we've created this, a second sparkling we do at a little bit of a more affordable price point. So for those in South Africa, this will sell for about 150 Rand a bottle. Barry, what is it selling that side of the world?
£15 a bottle for the cuvee.
So really just a more affordable offering. It's not of a lesser quality. It's just we don't age it for 3 years. This is only aging for 12 months on the lease. So as you would have seen from that previous slides, it captures more the fresher, fruity, florally side of sparkling wine. And so popular, this wine, it just, we can't keep up with the supply of this wine. So if you want some, obviously we can't deliver it right now, but it is online available from benguelacove.co.za. website, but also from Barry at Manning's Heath. Barry, just help me with your website address again.
www.manningsheath.com. Yeah.
So it is available, and something really worth trying it just as an alternative to this, which is quite a serious connoisseur style. The Cuvée 58 is more like a fun everyday occasion MCC if you're a fan and feel like having it more than once a week. Okay.
So, Johanna, I was very pleased to see the new shipment of wines arriving this morning because our Cuvée was on the last couple of boxes. So, yeah, we are well stocked in the UK for those that are interested.
All right, looks like, Annie, are you ready for us?
Hi, yeah. So over here we've got a cake that I baked this morning. Seeing as that one's not ready, it needs a little bit more time. Like I say, it takes about an hour in the oven, then I normally just leave it in for another 15 minutes. You can always just give it a little jiggle and just see how it's shaking, if it's set properly or not. Not this one. And like I said earlier, I like the old tropical flavors with the MCC. So a bit of caramelized pineapple. The MCC works perfectly with a bit of caramelization, especially on a bit of fruit, caramelized apple, caramelized pineapple. And that's why we have the passion fruit on there as well. So we're just going to give it a quick little cut over here. And then Michelle can taste it and see if it's working for her or not. Normally helps just to give your knife, just have a nice little bit of hot water on the side when you're doing it. Unfortunately, didn't think about it right now, but yeah.
We're adding some of this.
Yes, and then we also just have some caramelized pineapple. Like I said, that caramelization on the popcorn and that saltiness of the caramel just brings out an extra couple of flavors that is on the MCC. And this MCC is very versatile. You can pair oysters, you can do whatever you want with it. I just like something a little bit different. And of all the flavors that's in the cheesecake, like I said, the creaminess, the passion fruit, the biscuitiness of the bottom, it just brings out all those little flavors that is MCC and just pairs beautifully with the Joie.
It looks delicious, Annie. I wish you could send me a slice.
Can always try. I'm always going to get there.
It's really good.
Don't worry, I'll be visiting you soon. Can make me another one.
Actually, like the mousse of the MCC pairs so well with like the rich creaminess of the cheesecake, and those flavors just like enhance each other so much. It's really amazing. We'll definitely have to send you a slice, Barry.
You're rubbing it in a bit there. So after these Zoom calls, Johan, do you go across to the kitchen?
I couldn't help myself last week, so halfway through I went down to the kitchen to join them down there. So I'll be down there.
Brilliant.
There's some questions, and there's some good ones that I would like to, I know we're out of time, I would like just to answer briefly. Is one that I enjoy that we get quite often is putting a teaspoon in the bottle, does it help to preserve the bubbles? The answer is no, it doesn't, and I'm having a bit of a giggle because I sometimes see it at my own place at home, bottles with teaspoons in. But the best way, and this is really worthwhile investing in one of these, even if you're going to finish the bottle, if you're a couple of people, whenever you have the bottle and it's just sitting there, just to put one of these on, it's really simple. It just locks it in and it keeps the bubbles and everything inside. So this is the way to go, not the teaspoon.
Johan, sorry, if you have that closure, how long could you keep that in the fridge for?
It's for young sparkling wines. The bubbles are still quite alive. You can keep it until the next day. Okay. I wouldn't stretch it to 2 days, but it also a lot of it depends on the ullage in the bottle. If it's halfway, it will last longer than when it's close to the end, just because of the headspace you're dealing with. But the best way to go about it is to try and finish the bottle if you can, because I know we're pairing it with cheesecake here, and I'm sure it's an amazing pairing. But for me, my favorite pairing with sparkling wine is always a second glass of the same wine. For me, that's the perfect pairing when it comes to sparklings.
I'll definitely second that, Johan. You've never had the problem to have to store a wine for the next day.
Yes. So is the wine vegan friendly? Yes, it is. Then there was the question on vintage versus non-vintage. So thanks for asking that. This is a vintage product. So you'll see there it's 2017, where the Cuvée 58, for instance, is a non-vintage. So what we do with those that are labeled with a vintage, it's obviously 100% from that specific year. And because every year the growing conditions, the climate, the weather is different, those wines, the 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, although they might be from the same grapes, the same property, there might be subtle differences as the growing conditions and every year is different. So when you buy a vintage product, obviously there's a house style and a similarity, but there might be subtle differences between the different vintages, but it's okay. People are looking for that kind of thing, especially on the higher end. It's more likely to be a vintage product. Non-vintage wines, if you really liked what you've tasted the one time and you're looking for consistency and you want to have that exact taste profile and flavor every single time, then buying a non-vintage sparkling wine is what I recommend, because by making non-vintage sparkling wines, we would blend different vintages. So it might be a blend of 2 or 3 or 5 vintages that we blend together, and by making the blend, we can keep it consistent year on year on year. So every year kind of looks exactly the same. So non-vintage ones, more consistency. Vintage ones, it's kind of expected for them to be different year on year. Last question is, just want to see that I didn't miss anything else, is Cuvée 58. What does the 58 stand for? I'm going to try and keep it short, but because we've got a lot of weddings here on the property and with Barry at Manning's Heath and Leonard's Lee as well, and we use quite a lot of sparkling in-house, we were also looking for something that would fit the kind of the wedding theme. So the most famous cut, there's obviously various cuts how you can cut a diamond, but the most famous cut is what's called the round cut. So the round cut is the one with the most shine and reflection and shimmer, and the most sought after one. So and the round cut has got 58 facets to it. So it's a play on the round cut, the 58 facets of a diamond, and the skill and the art in cutting diamonds and how long those people train to do it. But when you get it right, it's like a sparkling wine, which is also a very detailed technical process. But when you get it right, sparkling wine, like with diamonds, you've got something amazing, something that shines and something that brings smiles to faces, and everybody is happy with the end result. So it's a play on the detail and the celebration of when it all comes together. And obviously, sparkling wine is a girl's best friend, and diamonds is a girl's best friend. So from there, the Cuvée 58 connection. One last question. Let's see what one we can take. We'll get back to all of these soon. Blancs. So a bit like, it's one of those confusing ones. Rosés are generally pink. Blanc de Noirs are very light pink. Blanc de Blancs are white. It's only using white grapes, where the Brut, like the Joie de Vivre we're having, is a blend of a white and a red grape. As you'll remember from our rosé discussion, if you don't keep it in contact with the skin, you don't extract that color. So even though there's a black grape being used in this, it's still nice and white in color, because we've removed the juice from the skins straight away. Okay, that is it. Barry, thanks for joining us.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks, Johan, and good luck with the rest of the series. Thanks to Annie and Michelle. Good to see you guys again. I hope to see you guys all soon in the Cape.
Yeah, so just to remind everyone, next week is we're doing our collage. So those that pre-ordered your wines and you're lucky enough to have them, join us. The collage is a blend, and we're going to take a deep dive into why do we blend, how do you go about blending, what is the advantages of blending. We'll look at blends from across the world, from different countries, so it's going to be a fun one to watch. And then we are open for orders. Locally in South Africa, we just can't deliver, but you can order, and the benefit of ordering is that you get first in line for when we open again, because you all know what it was like when we've opened after the first lockdown, the delay that there was on delivery. So if you get those orders in sooner than later, we can get them to you sooner once we go back to normal. And then, yeah, a lot of fun seeing your photos and comments on social media. So yeah, keep them coming. Really enjoy the interaction that we've got. Last 2 weeks ago, we had just over, I think it was 380 something people that watched. Last week, we got really close to 800 people watching across Zoom and Facebook. So yeah, we're building a bit of momentum and having fun at the same time. So I think that's enough for now. Hope to see everybody next week, Thursday. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
See you guys.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for